March 28, 1905, Volume 6, Effects of Disturbance. Continuous Encounter of Jesus with the Soul. As I was in my usual state, blessed Jesus came for just a little, and since I had said to a soul who was disturbed, "Think of not wanting to be disturbed, not only for your own good, but more so out of love for our Lord, because a soul who is disturbed is not only disturbed herself, but makes Jesus Christ disturbed." Later I said to myself, what nonsense I spoke. Jesus can never be disturbed. Then on coming he told me, "My daughter, instead of nonsense, you spoke a truth. In fact, in each soul I form a divine life, and if the soul is disturbed, this divine life that I keep forming also remains disturbed. Not only this, but it never comes to being completed perfectly." And he disappeared like a flash. Then I continued my usual interior work on the Passion, and as I reached the point of the encounter of Jesus and Mary on the way of the cross, he made himself seen again and told me, "My daughter, the soul also I encounter continuously, and if in the encounter I make with the soul I find her in the act of exercising virtues and united with me, she repays me for the sorrow I suffered when I encountered my mother, so sorrowful because of me." March 28, 1917, Volume 12, The I Love You of Jesus. The immediate act done with Jesus. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus just barely made himself seen, but so afflicted as to move one to pity. I said to him, "What is it, Jesus?" And he, "My daughter, unexpected things will arise and suddenly occur. Revolutions will break out everywhere. Oh, how much worse things will get." All afflicted, he remained silent. And I, "Life of my life, tell me another word." And Jesus, as though breathing on me, said, "I love you." And it seemed that everyone and everything would receive new life from that "I love you." I repeated, "Jesus, one more word." And he, "I could not tell you a more beautiful word than "I love you." This "I love you" of mine fills heaven and earth. It circulates through the saints, and they receive new glory. It descends into the hearts of the pilgrim souls, and some receive grace of conversion, some of sanctification. It penetrates into purgatory and pours upon their souls like beneficial dew, and they feel refreshed by it. Even the elements feel invested by new life in fecundating, in growing. All perceive the "I love you" of your Jesus. And do you know when the soul attracts one of my "I love yous"? When fusing herself in me, she assumes the divine attitude, and dissolving herself in me, she does everything I do. And my love, many times it is difficult to maintain this divine attitude constantly. And Jesus, "My daughter, what the soul cannot always do with her immediate acts in me, she can make up for with her attitude of goodwill. I will be so pleased by her as to become the vigilant sentry of each one of her thoughts, words, heartbeats, and so forth, placing them inside and outside of me as my cortege, looking at them with great love, as the fruit of the goodwill of the creature. Then when the soul, fusing herself in me, does her immediate acts with me, I feel so much drawn toward her that I do what she does together with her, transforming her work into divine work. I take everything into account, and I reward everything, even the tiniest things. Not one single act of goodwill remains defrauded in the creature. March 28, 1922, Volume 14, All that Jesus did upon earth is in continuous act of giving itself to man. Correspondence for each created thing. Continuing in my usual state, I was fusing all of myself in the holy will of my lovable Jesus. And he told me, "Daughter of my will, if you knew the portents, the prodigies that occur when you fuse yourself in my will, you would be stupefied. Listen a bit. All that I did upon earth is in continuous act of giving itself to man, surrounding him like a crown. My thoughts form a crown around the intelligence of the creature. My words, my works, my steps, and so forth, form a crown around her words, works, and steps, and so forth, so that by braiding her things with mine, I may say to my celestial Father that her works are like mine." Now who takes this continuous attitude of mine? Who lets herself be braided by my works, with which I crowned the whole human family? One who lives in my will. As you were fusing your thoughts in my volition, my thoughts, which surrounded you like a crown, heard the echo of my thoughts in your mind, and identifying themselves with yours, they multiplied yours with mine, and formed a double crown around the human intelligence. And my celestial Father received not only from me, but also from you, divine glory on the part of all created intelligences, the same with words and with all the rest. And he receives this divine glory not only from the creatures, but from all other created things, because all things were created to make continuous love run toward man, and man, by justice, should give homage and love to his Creator for each created thing. Now who compensates for this? Who makes that fiat through which all things were made her own, so as to spread homage, adoration, divine love for her Creator over everything? One who lives in my will. She makes that omnipotent fiat her own almost at each word of hers. The echo of the eternal fiat echoes within her divine fiat in which she lives. And it spreads. It runs. It flies, impressing another fiat on each created thing, and giving back to her Creator the homage and the love wanted by him. This was done by me when I was on earth. There was nothing for which I did not requite my divine Father on the part of all creatures. Now it is done, and I want it, I expect it, by one who lives in my will. If you could see how beautiful it is to see my glory, my love, my profound adoration united to yours, in every flickering of stars, in every drop of light of the sun. Oh, how it runs, flies upon the wings of the wind, filling the whole atmosphere. It crosses the waters of the sea. It places itself in each plant, in each flower. It multiplies at each motion. It is a voice that echoes over everything and says, "Love, glory, adoration to my Creator." Therefore, one who lives in my will is the echo of my voice, the repeater of my life, the perfect glory of my creation. How could I not love her? How could I not give to her all that I should give to all the other creatures together, giving her primacy over all? Ah, my love would feel constrained if I did not do so. March 28, 1926, Volume 19. How, by living in the divine will, all goods are centralized within the soul. The primary purpose of redemption was the divine fiat. Having received Holy Communion, I was calling everyone, my Queen Mamma, the saints, the first man Adam, with the retinue of all generations, up to the last man who will come upon earth, and then all created things, so that all together, prostrate with me around Jesus, we might adore him, bless him, love him, so that nothing might be missing around Jesus of all the works which came out of his hands, not a heart that palpitates, nor sun that shines, nor the vastness of the blue heavens studded with stars, nor the sea that murmurs, and not even the tiny little flower that gives off its fragrance. I wanted to centralize everything and everyone around Jesus' host, so that we might render him the honors due to him. His will made everything present to me as if everything were mine, and I wanted to give everything to Jesus. Now, while I was doing this, it seemed to me that Jesus was happy in looking at all generations and all of his things around himself, and clasping me to himself, he told me, "My daughter, how content I am in seeing all of my works around me. I feel I am given back the joy and the happiness which I gave them in creating them, and I repay them with new happiness. This is the great good which my will contains and brings, and in one who lives in it, it centralizes the goods of all, because there is no good which my will does not bring, and it binds the soul to everyone and to everything that belongs to it. So if the creature had not withdrawn from my will, I would have found everyone within each one, and each one in everyone. The goods, the light, the strength, the science, the love, the beauty, were to be common to all. There was to be neither yours nor mine, both in the natural and in the spiritual order. Each one could have taken as much as he wanted. The human life in my will was to be symbolized by the sun. Everyone can take its light, as much as they want of it, without anyone lacking it. However, as man withdrew from my will, the goods, the light, the strength, the love, the beauty, remained divided and as though halved among creatures. Therefore there was no more order, nor harmony, nor true love, either toward God or among themselves. Oh, if the sun could be divided into many rays, these solar rays, detaching from the center of light, would end up becoming darkness. And what would happen to the earth? Ah, indeed, no one could ever again have a light of his own and all for himself. So it was with my will. By withdrawing from it, man lost the fullness of goods, the fullness of light, of strength, of beauty, and so forth, and therefore he was forced to live a life of hardships. Therefore be attentive. Let your living in my will be continuous, that you may contain everything, and I may find everything in you. Then I was thinking to myself, if the true living in the supreme will contains so much good, why did my celestial mamma, who was all will of God, not impetrate the Fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven, together with the longed-for Redeemer, so as to let man return into that supreme fiat from which he came, to give back to him all the goods and the purpose for which he had been created? More so, since being all will of God, she had no nourishment extraneous to God. Therefore she possessed the very divine power, and with it she could impetrate everything. And my sweet Jesus, moving again in my interior, sighing, added, "My daughter, the primary purpose of all that my mamma did, and of all that I did in redemption, was that my fiat would reign upon earth. It would not have been decorous, nor a true love, nor a great magnanimity, and even less an operating worthy of the God that I was, if in coming into the world I had given and wanted to give to creatures the smaller thing, which was the means to be saved, but not the greater one, which was my will, which contains not only the remedies, but all possible goods that exist in heaven and on earth, and not only salvation and sanctity, but that sanctity which raises them to the very sanctity of their Creator. Oh, if you could penetrate into each prayer, act, word, and pain of my inseparable mamma, you would find in them the fiat which she longed for and impetrated. If you could penetrate into each drop of my blood, into each one of my heartbeats, breaths, steps, works, sorrows, and tears, you would find the fiat having primacy in them, which I longed and asked for creatures. But while the primary purpose was the fiat, my goodness had to descend to the secondary purpose and act almost like a teacher who, though possessing the highest sciences and being able to give noble and sublime lessons worthy of himself, since his students are all illiterate, has to lower himself to giving lessons in ABC, to then be able to reach little by little his primary purpose of imparting the lessons in the science he possesses, to make of them as many teachers worthy of such a teacher. If this teacher did not want to lower himself to giving lessons in inferior studies, and wanted to give lessons in his high science, the students, being illiterate, would not understand him, and confused by such a great science which they ignored, would leave him. And the poor teacher, by not wanting to lower himself, would give neither the small good nor the great good of his science. Now, my daughter, when I came upon earth, creatures were all illiterate in the things of heaven, and if I had wanted to speak about the fiat and of the true living in it, they would have been incapable of comprehending. Since they did not know the way to come to me, the majority of them being crippled, blind, sick, I had to lower myself within the guise of my humanity, which covered that fiat which I wanted to give, becoming their brother, associating with everyone, to be able to teach the first rudiments, the ABC of the supreme fiat. And everything I taught, did, and suffered was nothing but preparing the way, the kingdom, and the dominion of my will. This is the usual way of our works, to do minor things as a preparatory act for greater things. Did I not do the same with you? At the beginning, I certainly did not speak to you about the supreme fiat, or about the height, the sanctity, which I wanted you to reach in my will. Nor did I ever mention the greater mission to which I was calling you. Rather, I kept you like a little child, to whom I delighted in teaching obedience, love of suffering, detachment from everyone, death to your own self. And as you corresponded, I rejoiced because I could see, prepared in you, the place in which to put my fiat and the sublime lessons that pertain to my will. The same happened in redemption. Everything was done for the purpose that the fiat might reign again in the creature, just as when we issued him from our creative hands. We have no hurry in our works, because we have not only the centuries, but all eternity at our disposal. Therefore we proceed at a slow pace, but for our own triumph. First we prepare, and then we act. Nor do I have less power after returning to heaven than I would have if I continued to be on the earth. My power is always the same, whether I am in heaven or on earth. Did I not call and choose my mamma while being in my celestial fatherland? In the same way I have called and chosen you for the longed-for Fiat, with the same power which no one can resist. Even more, I tell you that in order to obtain this, you have at your disposal greater and more important things than my beloved mamma did. Therefore you are more fortunate, because she did not have a mamma, nor her works as help, in order to obtain the longed-for Redeemer. But she had only the cortege of the Acts of the Prophets, the patriarchs, and the good of the Old Testament, and of the great foreseen goods of the future Redeemer. You, on the other hand, have a mamma and all of her works as help. You have the helps, the pains, the prayers, and the very life, not foreseen but carried out, of your Redeemer. There are no goods nor prayers that have been done and are being done in the Church, which are not with you to help you to obtain the longed-for Fiat, since the primary purpose of all that was done by me, by the Queen of Heaven, and by all the good, was the fulfillment of my will. Everything is with you to impetrate the realization of their purpose. Therefore be attentive. I will always be with you, and so will my mamma. You will not be alone in longing for the triumph of our will. March 28, 1938, Volume 35. How for those who live in the divine will, the creation serves as many cities, where the creature can repatriate. How the human act must begin and finish in the divine volition in order to be complete. Reign of light. The greatest pain of Jesus is to see that creatures do not live in his will. My poor mind goes always in search for the acts done by the divine volition. It seems that as I look for them, they await me in order to be found, because these acts yearn to be found by the creatures, to receive her I love you, and to let her know how much they love her, while the soul feels as though repatriated in the acts of her Creator, immersed in the sea of joys and happiness. My always adorable Jesus, seeing me surprised, repeated his short little visit and told me, "My blessed daughter, since man was made by us to live in our will, all our acts had to serve as many little cities or nations in which man could find by right his fatherland, the different cities where he was to find his amusements, his joys, and the enchanting and delightful scenes that his Creator had prepared for him with so much love. Therefore one can say that the sun is a city, and as the soul enters our will, she finds this city of light, as well as all the various beauties of color and sweetness. She finds our creative and festive act full of joys, love, and unspeakable happiness, and she dives into these seas of beauty, sweetness, love, and joy, taking her long walks in her fatherland as the owner of all the goods that she finds in it. Oh, how happy we are in seeing our works, our cities, created only for man, no longer as deserts, but populated by our children. Upon entering our will, they find the way that leads them to the different cities that we have formed in the creation. In some place they find a delight, in another a distinct joy, somewhere else a more outstanding knowledge of their Creator, in another place a love so intense that hugs them, kisses them, and communicates to them the life of love. Each created thing possesses something of ourselves, not for itself, but to give it to the creatures. However, the creatures must live in our will, otherwise the door remains closed, and at the most they can enjoy the effects, but not the fullness of the goods contained in our works. Therefore, my daughter, the act of the creature must begin and finish in our will in order to be perfect and complete. Our will itself gives its own life of light and love, so that the act may be complete, and nothing beautiful, holy, and good may be lacking to it. If this act does not begin in our will, order, sanctity, and beauty would be missing, and it cannot be signed with the seal of our will as act belonging to it. It makes one want to cry, my daughter, to see so many deranged and disordered human acts, some left at the beginning, some halfway. To some a point is missing, to others another point, and then even worse, some are smeared with mud, some are rotten. Some are as if soaked in guilt, and do nothing other than irritate our just justice. There cannot be any good in the creature without our will, and even if it seems that they do some good, it is only apparent good, which cannot last, because the substance of the life of our Fiat is missing. One challenge, one disappointment is sufficient for that good to end, and for them to regret having done it. Instead, anything done in my will possesses an unshakable firmness, and doesn't stop in the face of disappointments or challenges. Rather, these acts run even more to give the life of good that they possess. You must know that the creature who does her acts in our will makes complete and perfect acts. But the one who lives always in it finds herself under a continuous rain of light that pours all the effects of the various beauties of our divine life over her as she moves, palpitates, or breathes. Our divine being is most pure light, and although being endless light, it encloses all the possible imaginable goods. It is light, and it is word, and all eyes, it looks everywhere. Nothing can hide from us. This light is also work. It is step, and it is life that gives life to everyone and everything. It contains inexhaustible beauties and endless joys and happiness. Now, one who lives always in our will is always under the reign of light of our ruling and creative word. Oh, how our word transforms this creature, always speaking to her about our supreme being, and producing all our divine effects upon her, with such variety of beauty that we ourselves remain enraptured. Our gaze of light is constantly on her. Our step always runs towards her. Our works hug her with the arms of light and squeeze her to our lap. All of them pour light upon her, to communicate to her our gaze of light, our works and steps of light. Therefore, the one who always lives in our will is in continuous and direct communication with her Creator, and receives all the effects that a God can produce. On the other hand, one who operates in it is in communication with our works, and her works are molded with our works. Then I continued to trace the acts of the divine will, and arrived at those that our Lord did in the redemption. I kissed them, I adored them, I blessed them, I thanked them one by one, and using the same love with which Jesus loved them, I too loved them. And Jesus, all moved and touched in seeing his acts being loved by his same love, told me, "My daughter, only love touches me, wounds me, and moves me to speak, to reveal my secrets to my beloved creature, secrets that are hidden to those who do not love me, because not loving me they would not understand my dialect of love. You must know that each one of these acts that I performed on earth contains a pain so intense that, if my divinity had not sustained me, it would have been enough to make me die. As I operated, my will created in me the pain of not finding the human will inside mine, so that I might enclose it within my acts and give it virtue and grace to make it live in my will. In everything I did, whether I was breathing, palpitating, looking, or walking, I searched the human will in order to enclose it and give it the primary place in my breath, heartbeat, gaze, and steps. What pain, my daughter, wanting to do good and not finding anyone to whom to give it. I wanted to put the creature in a safe place, where she could have been happy, since my pains, my works, and my very humanity would not only have been her defense, but they would also have formed her royal palace, in which they would have kept her like a queen. Instead of being grateful and listening, she ran away from my hands, from my pains, to live unhappily in the middle of dangers and enemies with nobody to defend her. What pain! What pain! I can say that my greatest pain down here, that gave me a continuous death, was to see the creatures neither living in my will nor doing it, because I saw that my acts remained without the purpose for which I was doing them, without giving the life with which they were invested. And if I were not all-seeing, seeing all the centuries in one present act, as well as my beloved children who were going to live in my divine will, and who had to use all that my humanity did and suffered in order to establish my kingdom, using it as their most beautiful residence, I could not have borne such a great pain. Therefore continue to trace my acts, my steps, and my pains, to ask for my will to come and reign on earth, and my pain will be soothed, and will turn into love, to shorten the time and make my will known, loved, and reign. I will keep you as refreshment for me, and as bearer of the balm to my pains. And when I see my acts and my sufferings embittered with pain because the creature is running away from my will, I will come and take refuge in you, to soothe and embalm my sufferings too embittered by the pain. End of March 28th. Fiat.